The Café That Waited for the Rain. The little cafe on the corner of Willow and 3rd had a peculiar reputation in town, one that most people mentioned with a fond, half-joking shrug, that it never really felt alive until it rained. On sunny days it did fine enough business, a steady trickle of regulars stopping in for coffee on their way to somewhere else. But on rainy days, something in the whole place seemed to wake up properly, windows fogging gently at the edges, the old brass bell over the door ringing more often than the old brass bell over the door, ringing more often than the warm smell of baking bread reaching further out into the wet street than it ever seemed to on clear afternoons. Nadia had owned the cafe for going on 15 years now, inheriting it from an aunt who had run it for 30 before her, and she had long since stopped questioning why the rain seemed to suit the place so well. She simply leaned into it, the way her aunt always had, keeping a particular pot of soup ready on slow grey days, keeping the corner armchairs positioned just so beneath the best reading light, keeping, above all, a patience about her that never once seemed to hurry along a customer who wanted to sit through an entire storm nursing one slowly cooling cup of tea. Today had promised rain since early morning, the sky pressing down grey and heavy over the rooftops, and Nadia had felt it in her bones the way she always did, some old instinct passed down, she suspected from her aunt, along with the cafe itself. She'd started the bread early, kneading the dough with the same unhurried rhythm she always used on days like this, and set a pot of her grandmother's vegetable soup simmering low on the back burner well before the first customer had even come through the door. By early afternoon, the rain had properly settled in, tapping first against the cafe's tall front windows in scattered, hesitant drops, then thickening steadily into the full, unhurried percussion that Nadia loved best, the kind that seemed to promise it would stay a good long while rather than pass through in some brief, dramatic burst. She watched it from behind the counter, wiping down already clean surfaces, mostly for the pleasure of having something to do with her hands, while she watched the street outside slowly empty of everyone except the truly determined. The old brass bell rang for the first time a little after 2, and Mr. Holloway shuffled in, shaking his umbrella out carefully on the mat by the door, the way he always did, settling into his usual spot by the window with the particular contentment of a man who had been coming to this exact table on exactly these kinds of afternoons for longer than Nadia had been alive. She brought him his coffee without needing to ask, black with a little cream on the side, and he thanked her the same quiet way he always did, already turning his attention to the rain streaking down the glass beside him. More regulars trickled in as the afternoon wore on, each one greeted the way old friends are, with a small nod, a familiar order remembered without needing to be asked twice. There was Priya, who taught piano lessons 2 streets over and always ordered the same pot of jasmine tea, spreading her lesson books across the corner table with the calm efficiency of someone who had long ago made peace with grading student compositions to the sound of rain against glass. There was old Desmond, who ran the shoe repair shop and came in mostly, Nadia suspected, for the company rather than the coffee, settling into conversation with Mr. Holloway about nothing in particular, the two of them content to let long silences stretch between sentences the way only genuinely comfortable friends ever could. The cafe filled slowly but steadily through the afternoon, never crowded exactly, but pleasantly full, the low hum of quiet conversation mixing easily with the rain's steady percussion against the windows and the occasional soft chime of the brass bell announcing someone new ducking in out of the wet. Nadia moved between tables with the unhurried efficiency of someone entirely at home in her own little kingdom, refilling cups, clearing the occasional empty plate, pausing here and there for a few words with a regular before moving on to the next small task. This, she often thought on afternoons exactly like this one, was the whole reason she'd never once regretted taking over the cafe from her aunt, despite the long hours and the early mornings and the particular exhaustion that came with being, in a small but real way, responsible for so many people's small daily comforts. There was something deeply satisfying about a room full of people choosing of their own accord to spend a rainy afternoon exactly here, in the warm, bread-scented quiet she had built and maintained day after day for 15 years running. It was while restocking the small shelf of pastries behind the counter that Nadia's hand brushed against something tucked far back in the corner, behind an old ceramic jar that had sat there unmoved for as long as she could remember. She drew it out carefully and found a small cloth-bound recipe book, its cover faded and soft with age, clearly her aunt's, clearly forgotten back here for years, tucked away and never quite gotten around to being properly unpacked. She opened it carefully, standing there behind the counter while the rain kept its steady rhythm against the windows, and found her aunt's familiar handwriting filling page after page, recipes for the soups and breads Nadia had grown up watching her make, each one annotated in small, practical notes in the margins. A little more salt if the day's cheese is milder than usual. Let it rise twice as long if the kitchen's gone cold. This one's better the day after. Don't rush it. Near the very back, tucked between two blank pages, Nadia found a folded note in the same familiar hand, addressed simply to whoever runs this place after me. She unfolded it slowly, feeling something warm and unexpected rise in her chest, and read her aunt's words for what she realized, with a small jolt, must have been the very first time. A short, plainly written note explaining that the cafe had never really been about the coffee or the bread at all, but about giving people somewhere warm and unhurried to sit through whatever storm happened to be passing over their lives that particular day, weather or otherwise. Keep the soup on low, the note ended, and don't ever rush anyone out the door. The rain always stops eventually. Let them stay till it does. Nadia read it twice, eyes stinging faintly, before folding it carefully back along its original crease and tucking it into her apron pocket, deciding it would stay there now, close at hand, on every rainy afternoon from here forward. The afternoon wore on unhurried, the rain never once threatening to let up, and Nadia found herself falling into the particular easy rhythm that only ever showed up on days exactly like this one, a rhythm built less around busyness and more about simple, steady presence, moving from table to table, topping up cups, trading a few quiet words, letting the cafe's low, warm hum carry everyone gently along together. A young couple came in sometime around 4, soaked through despite their umbrella, laughing at their own bad luck as they shook off their coats by the door. Nadia recognized them vaguely, new to the neighborhood, the kind of young couple still discovering which corners of town belonged to them and which didn't. She sat them near the window, brought them towels for their hair without being asked, and watched with quiet satisfaction as they settled in, laughing quietly together over shared pastry, in no apparent hurry to brave the rain again anytime soon. Priya finished her lesson planning around 5, closing her books with the small, satisfied sigh of someone who had gotten more done than expected, and lingered a while longer over a second pot of tea, chatting easily with Desmond and Mr. Holloway about nothing much at all, the state of the town's roads after all this rain, a rumor about the old cinema finally reopening, whether the rain might let up by morning or settle in for the whole week. Nadia listened with half an ear while she worked, comforted by the low, familiar murmur of it, the particular music of a room full of people who genuinely liked spending time in each other's company. Outside, the rain had thickened further as evening approached, the sky gone from grey to a deep textured blue-black, streetlights flickering on early to cut through the gloom, their glow smeared and doubled in the wet pavement below. The cafe's windows had fogged properly now at the edges, the warm light inside pushing back gently against the darkening, sodden world beyond the glass, and Nadia felt, watching it all, the particular contentment that only ever arrived on nights like this. Everyone she cared about, in one way or another, gathered safely under one warm roof while the weather did its worst outside. She began the evening's second batch of bread a little before 6, working the dough with practiced hands, while half listening to Desmond tell some long, winding story about a customer's shoe repair gone comically wrong decades ago, the details growing more elaborate with each retelling over the years, though nobody seemed to mind the embellishments. While reaching for the flour tin on the high shelf, her fingers found instead a small, faded photograph tucked behind it, curling slightly at the corners, clearly forgotten there for years. It showed her aunt, decades younger, standing behind this same counter on some long-ago rainy evening, apron dusted with flour, laughing at whoever held the camera, the cafe behind her recognizably the same, and yet subtly different chairs, a different color on the far wall, but the same warm, crowded, rain-soaked feeling filling every corner of the frame. On the back, in the same careful hand as the recipe book, someone had written only, "Best kind of night, full house, bad weather, good bread." Nadia propped the photograph against the old ceramic jar on the counter, facing out into the room, deciding it belonged there now among the cafe's other small, quiet treasures, and went back to her kneading with a small, private smile, feeling, not for the first time this particular evening, the strange comfort of standing in exactly the same spot her aunt once had on a night that felt, in all the ways that mattered, remarkably similar. Sometime around 7, the rain thickened further still, arriving in earnest now, drumming hard against the windows with a fuller, more insistent rhythm than it had carried all afternoon. A low roll of thunder moved somewhere beyond the rooftops, distant but unmistakable, and the cafe's regulars all glanced up at once, the way people who have weathered plenty of storms together tend to, sharing a brief, knowing look before returning easily to their conversations. The wind picked up outside, rattling the old cafe sign on its hinges above the door, and a fresh gust drove the rain sideways against the glass, hard enough that the young couple by the window instinctively leaned back from it, laughing at their own reflex. Nadia moved to check the door was properly latched against the wind, an old habit from 15 years of exactly these evenings, and found, glancing out at the street, that it had gone nearly empty now, except for the occasional hurried figure dashing between doorways, shoulders hunched against the downpour. "Might be settling in for the night," Desmond observed, peering out at the darkening street, and Nadia nodded, already moving toward the back to check on the soup, feeling the particular satisfaction of a keeper whose small, warm kingdom was once again exactly where everyone wanted to be on a night like this. She kept the cafe open a little later than usual, official closing time coming and going without much ceremony, since nobody currently inside seemed in any particular hurry to brave the storm, and Nadia had long ago decided that a full house on a proper rainy night was worth far more than the modest savings of closing on schedule. She refilled the bread basket, ladled out fresh bowls of soup for anyone who wanted one, and let the evening simply continue at its own unhurried pace, the rain drumming steady and full against the windows, the warm hum of conversation filling every corner of the small room. Mr. Holloway finished his coffee sometime around 8, gathering his coat and umbrella with obvious reluctance, and paused at the door to thank Nadia the same quiet way he always did, adding this time a small, unexpected compliment about how much the place had always reminded him of coming in from the rain as a boy, though he never did explain further, simply nodding once and stepping out into the wet dark with his collar turned up against the wind. Priya and Desmond lingered a while longer, the two of them settling into one of those easy, meandering conversations that seemed built specifically for rainy nights with nowhere else to be, and Nadia let them stay, moving quietly around them, wiping down the now empty tables, banking the evening's affairs toward their close without any particular hurry to usher anyone out. The young couple left a little after 9, ducking gratefully beneath the umbrella Nadia insisted on lending them, promising with obvious sincerity to return once the weather cleared, and not long after, Priya and Desmond made their own unhurried good nights as well, the cafe slowly emptying out the way it always eventually did, no matter how good the storm. Nadia stood a moment in the sudden quiet once the door had finally properly closed behind the last of them, listening to the rain's steady rhythm against the windows, the low creak of the old buildings settling around her, the particular hush that only ever arrived after a full, warm evening had wound gently down to its close. She began the last small tasks of closing with the same unhurried care she carried through everything else, wiping down the counter, banking the last of the soup for tomorrow, sweeping the floor slowly in the low light, letting the day's accumulated small satisfactions settle properly into her tired shoulders. With the cafe finally closed and locked, Nadia made her way up the narrow back staircase to the small apartment above, the same one her aunt had lived in for 30 years before her, its low ceilings and creaking floorboards familiar enough by now to navigate easily even in the dim evening light. The rain sounded different up here, closer somehow, drumming directly against the roof rather than filtered through the cafe's tall windows below, a fuller, more intimate sound that Nadia had come, over the years, to find deeply comforting. She made herself a small pot of the same jasmine tea Priya always ordered, carrying it to the worn armchair by her own small window, and sat a while simply watching the rain streak down the glass, feeling the particular satisfaction of a long, full day finally winding down towards its close. The recipe book and the small note from her aunt sat on the table beside her, along with the old photograph she'd found tucked behind the flour tin, and she found herself paging through the recipe book again, slowly, in no hurry at all, reading her aunt's careful handwritten notes by the low lamplight.
Near the middle of the book, tucked between a recipe for the vegetable soup and one for a spiced apple bread Nadia hadn't made in years, she found another folded note she hadn't noticed earlier, shorter than the first, written in the same careful hand. It read simply, "Some nights the cafe does more good than any of us realize. You never know who needed somewhere warm to sit today. Keep the door open as long as you reasonably can." Nadia read it twice, thinking of Mr. Holloway's small, unexpected comment at the door earlier that evening, of the young couple's grateful laughter, of Desmond and Priya's easy, unhurried conversations stretching long into the evening, and felt, reading it, a quiet certainty that her aunt had somehow already known exactly the kind of evening this would turn out to be, decades before it happened. She set the recipe book down carefully, tea cooling now to its perfect drinking temperature, and let herself simply sit a while longer, listening to the rain's steady rhythm against the roof, feeling entirely, uncomplicatedly grateful for the small, warm kingdom she'd been trusted with, for the aunt who had built its rhythms long before her, for the particular quiet purpose of keeping a door open on nights exactly like this one. The storm outside showed no sign of easing as the evening wore fully into night, the wind picking up occasionally to rattle the old window panes in their frames, the rain settling into that full, unhurried percussion that Nadia loved best of all, steady and constant enough to eventually stop noticing as separate from silence itself. She finished her tea slowly, refilling it once from the small pot, and let her thoughts wander the way they always did on nights like this, unhurried, drifting easily between memory and simple present comfort. She thought of her aunt, gone now nearly 6 years, and found that the grief of it had settled over time into something gentler than it once was, less a sharp absence and more a kind of ongoing presence, felt most clearly in exactly moments like this one, tea in hand, rain against the glass, the whole small cafe below humming quietly with the accumulated warmth of everyone who had ever chosen to sit through a storm inside it. She thought too of her own younger self, decades from now perhaps, finding this same recipe book tucked behind some future version of the flour tin, adding her own small careful notes in the margins, leaving her own folded note near the back for whoever came next. The thought didn't feel sad so much as it felt right, part of some much longer, gentler story that the cafe itself seemed to be quietly telling, one rainy evening at a time. Eventually, tea finished and the evening's last small satisfactions properly settled, Nadia rose to prepare for sleep, moving through the familiar small tasks of the apartment with the same unhurried care she carried through everything else on nights like this. She changed into soft, worn sleep clothes, brushed her teeth at the small basin, and paused a moment at her own tired reflection in the narrow mirror above it, thinking, as she often did up here, that she looked a little more like her aunt each year, something about the particular tiredness the cafe always left behind, a good tiredness, the kind earned rather than simply endured. She set the recipe book and a small folded notes carefully on her bedside table, along with the old photograph propped against the lamp, and climbed into bed with the rain's steady rhythm filling the small dark room, drumming against the roof directly above her in a sound she had long ago stopped finding anything but deeply comforting. The heavier blanket at the foot of the bed went mostly unneeded tonight, the apartment holding its warmth well against the storm outside, though she pulled it partway up regardless, out of habit more than actual need. She lay a while listening, the way she always did on nights exactly like this one, to the rain against the roof, to the old building's familiar creaks as it settled around her, to the distant occasional rumble of thunder moving further off now, out beyond the edge of town. Downstairs, she knew without needing to check, the cafe sat quiet and dark, chairs upturned on tables, the last of the soup cooling on the stove, patient and waiting for morning, the way it had been waiting in one form or another for 30 years before she'd ever taken it over herself. The mind does a curious thing on the edge of sleep, especially after a long, full day spent moving quietly among people you care about. It stops sorting so carefully between what is remembered and what is only imagined, and lets the two drift together into something softer than either. Nadia lay with eyes closed, not quite asleep, thoughts moving without any real steering, the way steam rises slowly off a fresh pot of tea, carried along by whatever current happened to be running beneath it. She thought she heard very faintly beneath the rain her aunt's voice again. Not words exactly, just the warm, practical cadence she'd always used explaining some small kitchen task, patient and unhurried, the specific tone reserved for teaching someone the parts of a recipe that never quite made it onto the page.
She thought of the photograph propped against her lamp, her aunt decades younger, laughing behind this same counter on some long ago rainy evening, and in her half-dream the two evenings seemed to blur gently together, her aunt's crowded, storm-soaked cafe folding easily into her own, as though the same warm light had simply been passing uninterrupted from one keeper to the next across all these years. The wind moved against the window, and in her drifting mind it became, briefly, the sound of the old brass bell over the cafe door, ringing for one more late customer ducking in out of the rain, before she remembered, in the loose logic of half-sleep, that the cafe was closed now, dark and quiet below, and that the sound was only wind, only rain, only the old building settling into its own long night, the same as she was settling into hers. Somewhere below, she imagined she could feel the whole small cafe breathing gently around her, full of the accumulated warmth of everyone who had sat inside it that day. Mr. Holloway's quiet coffee, Priya's jasmine tea, Desmond's long meandering stories, the young couple's grateful laughter, all of it settled now into the walls themselves, the way good evenings always seem to, and Nadia felt herself smile faintly in the dark, eyes still closed, feeling entirely, weightlessly content. Tomorrow existed only in the vaguest terms now, the bread that would need starting early, the soup that would need refreshing, whatever weather the morning happened to bring, rain or shine, quiet or full. None of it pulled at her the way tasks so often did on ordinary days, demanding speed, demanding urgency. Tonight, everything could simply wait its turn, unhurried, the way the rain was unhurried, the way the cafe itself had always been unhurried, patient through 15 years and 30 more before that, waiting faithfully for whoever needed somewhere warm to sit out their particular storm. The rain went on, the old building held, the way it had always held, through this storm and every storm before it, and somewhere beneath all that steady sound, Nadia's breathing slowed further still, and further, until it too had settled fully into the storm's own patient rhythm, indistinguishable from the rest. Later, though later meant very little on a night like this, stretched and formless as it was, the rain eased by slow degrees, its steady percussion softening into something closer to a whisper against the roof, gentle now, unhurried, as though the storm itself had simply grown tired and settled in to rest alongside everyone it had passed over that night. Downstairs, the cafe sat dark and quiet, chairs upturned, the last embers of warmth fading slowly from the old ceramic soup pot on the back burner, the recipe book's careful notes, and the small folded messages waiting patiently in their places, ready for whoever needed them next, tonight or years from now. The old brass bell above the door hung still and silent, saving its ring for whoever the morning happened to bring in out of the rain. Nadia slept the particular deep, dreamless sleep that only comes after a long, full day spent in good company, the kind of sleep the body simply surrenders to, without negotiation, without the usual restless surfacing that so often interrupts an ordinary night. Her breathing was slow and even, one hand resting near the small stack of her aunt's letters and recipes on the bedside table, the blanket drawn up loosely against the last of the storm's lingering chill.
If she dreamed, the dreams left no mark on her sleeping face, no furrow of worry, no small restless movement, only the occasional soft exhale, the occasional shift of a shoulder settling deeper into the pillow, the unmistakable stillness of someone entirely, thoroughly at rest after a day well spent. The old building, for its part, seemed to settle too, its familiar creaks growing quieter as the night wore fully into its deepest hours, the rain outside continuing its gentle, unhurried rhythm against the roof, patient and constant, asking nothing of the sleeping town below, except that it simply let the water fall. Somewhere out past the rooftops, the storm moved slowly on toward the next town over, carrying its low, steady voice away into some other night, some other rooftop, some other small, warm cafe perhaps, waiting, the way Nadia's always had, for whoever needed somewhere dry to sit until it passed. Toward dawn, the rain thinned at last to something barely more than mist, drifting low along the wet street outside, rather than falling from any clear direction, and the light that crept between the buildings came the color of a dove's wing, pale and soft-edged, unhurried in the way all light seems to be after a long night of storm. Nadia woke slowly, the way mornings after a good rain always seem to arrive, without any sharp edge to the transition, simply drifting up out of sleep the way sleep itself had arrived hours before, layer by gentle layer. For a while she lay still, listening to the hush that had replaced the night's noise. No more wind against the glass, no more thunder rolling somewhere beyond the rooftops, only the faint companionable drip of rainwater finding its way off the eaves outside, and beneath it, somewhere close, the small industrious chatter of a sparrow that apparently decided the storm was over long before the sky had quite agreed.
She rose without hurrying, dressed simply, and made her way down the narrow back staircase to the cafe below, the smell of yesterday's bread still lingering faintly in the cool morning air, mixing now with the clean, rain-washed scent drifting in from the street outside as she unlocked the front door and propped it open to let the morning in properly. The street outside looked washed entirely clean, puddles catching the pale early light in scattered silver patches, the old cobblestones dark and glossy where the rain had settled into every crack and seam. A few early risers moved past on their way to work, nodding a familiar good morning as they passed the cafe's freshly opened door, and Nadia nodded back, feeling the particular satisfaction of a keeper standing at the threshold of her own small, warm kingdom, ready once again for whatever the day happened to bring. She started the morning's first batch of bread with the same unhurried care she always used, kneading the dough slowly while the coffee machine worked through its first patient cycle behind her, and propped the old photograph of her aunt up on the counter, where it would stay from now on, facing out into the room, keeping its own quiet watch over whoever came through the door next. Mr. Holloway was the first customer in, shaking the last of the morning's dampness off his coat, settling into his usual spot by the window with the same quiet contentment he always carried, and Nadia brought him his coffee without needing to ask, black with a little cream on the side, the way she always had, the way she suspected her aunt had brought it to him for years before that. "Good rain last night," he said, the way he sometimes did, more observation than conversation, and Nadia smiled, glancing toward the recipe book still sitting on the shelf behind the counter, its small folded notes tucked safely inside. The best kind, she agreed, and meant it entirely, already looking forward in some small, unhurried corner of her mind to whichever storm happened to roll through next, and all the quiet, ordinary good it would surely bring with it. That, she thought, wiping down the counter one more unhurried time before the morning's small crowd began properly arriving, was really all the cafe had ever asked of her: to keep the door open, to keep the soup on low, to let people stay exactly as long as they needed, storm or shine, and trust that the rain, whenever it came, would bring exactly the right people in out of it. Outside, the last of the morning mist lifted slowly off the wet street, and the old brass bell above the door rang again, bright and familiar, announcing the day's next arrival. Priya, a little early for her usual hour, shaking a damp umbrella out on the mat exactly the way Mr. Holloway always did, smiling at the small coincidence of it as she settled into her corner table. The cafe, waiting patiently as it always had, opened itself up once more to whatever the weather chose to bring, warm and unhurried, and exactly as full in its own quiet way as it needed to be.